But I also hope the Welsh family can keep their promise and find the herbs I need promptly. No problem, Eleanor replied, a slight relief in her tone. She feared Dustin might hold a grudge and tamper with her grandpa's treatment. Bastard, get lost now. Don't disturb our lovey-dovey time, Ezra taunted. He stood in the way, his arm wrapped around Eleanor's waist. A smug smile on his lips, and his eyes were filled with arrogance and disdain. Ezra smirked as he watched Dustin leave the restaurant. Did that sore loser really think he stood a chance with Eleanor? He thought too highly of himself, he pondered, his thoughts flowing naturally. No matter how hard he tried to get closer to Eleanor, it only took a bit of my sweet words to win her back. That's the difference between us. Eleanor gazed at Dustin's retreating figure, her expression a mix of confusion and disappointment. She'd always believed Dustin liked her, which is why he'd gone to such great lengths to help her. But his nonchalant exit without even a backward glance left her wondering. Is he heartbroken or just playing hard to get? She mused, Dustin, I thought you were a good person, so I wanted to bring you into my world and help you achieve great things. I never expected achieve great things. I never expected you to be so oblivious to what you're missing. You've missed out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a beautiful life. It was your choice, and I gave you the chance, but you didn't take it. She shook her head, her expression turning cold and aloof. Well, so be it. You're simply not meant to be in my world. No matter how hard you try to climb, you'll never reach our heights. If it weren't for my loyalty and fondness for the past, you wouldn't even qualify as my friend. In the dark of night, within the Welsh residence's underground secret room, a thin and battered man was tightly bound to a pillar. His body was wrapped in bandages, concealing the grievous wounds he had endured. As the bandages were carefully removed, the once gaping injuries on the man's body had now scabbed over. Some had even completely healed, leaving behind only faint traces. Alistair watched in delight. Ha ha! Dew balm is truly miraculous, he exclaimed. We've hit the jackpot. Since obtaining the formula for dew balm, the Welsh family had secretly recruited individuals to serve as test subjects for their experiments. Then, in the early hours of that day, they successfully made their first batch of dew balm and wasted no time in putting it to the test. The results were nothing short of astonishing. In just hours, wounds inflicted by blades were healing at an incredible pace. Joanne reported with a smile, dew balm appears to have no significant side effects. We can start the production. Moreover, there's no comparable healing salve on the market. Dew balm will allow the Welsh family to carve out a new empire. Excellent. Alistair laughed. Joanne, you were amazing. Extracting this miraculous formula for a single dragon Panax plant is brilliant. Joanne's expression turned serious. Don't celebrate too soon. There are potential risks. Risks? What do you mean? He looked puzzled. Don't forget, we're not the only ones with the formula for dew balm. Dustin also has it, she explained, narrowing her eyes. If Dustin decides to sell the formula to others, we won't have the exclusive rights. Yes, you're right, Alistair said, his brows furrowing slightly. The Welsh family wasn't renowned for their medical expertise. If they didn't monopolize the dew balm, their gains could slip through their fingers. Alistair, we need to address this issue at once. The dew balm formula must remain exclusively ours, Joanne asserted. He questioned, what's your plan? It's simple, kill Dustin. The next morning, Dustin sat cross-legged in a guest room at the Welsh residence, deep in meditation. A brisk knock on the door abruptly shattered his peaceful moment. Who's there? Dustin asked as he slowly opened his eyes. Dr. Reese, it's me, Fever. I've brought your breakfast, a familiar voice from the other side replied. All right, Dustin replied, getting up to answer the door. 15-year-old Fever, a humble orphan and a housekeeper in the Welsh family, stood outside with a finely crafted food container. He had been taking care of Dustin since his arrival the day before. He was always ready with a cup of tea and a friendly word. Thank you for your hard work, Dustin said, stepping aside to welcome Fever inside. No trouble at all, Fever responded with a respectful nod. He placed the food container on the table and unveiled the morning meal. Dr. Reese, Today's breakfast is quite a feast, he explained as he revealed each dish. The first dish is a spicy shrimp cocktail. The second is a savory beef stew. The third is a sautéed mushrooms. The fourth is seafood scampi. The fifth is a crispy chicken feast. The sixth is a sizzling meatball platter. The seventh is Chateaubriand steak. And lastly, the eighth dish is a creamy fish roe chowder. All the dishes are set. Please take your time and enjoy the meal, Fever announced. Dustin chuckled and said, "Why such a grand breakfast? A simple full English breakfast would do. Dr. Reese, you are a respected guest of the Welsh family. Mr. Welsh himself insisted on providing you with the finest hospitality," Fever explained. "Oh, speaking of which, how is Mr. Welsh Sr.? Did he regain consciousness this morning?" Dustin asked out of the blue. Earlier today, Mr. Welsh Sr. briefly regained consciousness. Thanks to your miraculous treatment, his condition has improved significantly. The Welsh family is deeply grateful, Fever reported. Excellent news, Dustin replied. As he turned his attention to the table full of dishes, Dustin seemed overwhelmed. "Fever, have you had breakfast yet?" Fever shook his head and said, "Not yet." Dustin invited Fever warmly. "Well then, let's eat together. I doubt I can finish all these dishes by myself." Fever hesitated, waving his hand dismissively. "I couldn't possibly. These dishes were prepared specifically for you, Dr. Reese. As a mere housekeeper, I don't have the privilege to partake in such a meal." Dustin smiled and reassured him, "No need to be so formal with me. Please, have a seat and join me." "But, Dr. Reese, this goes against the rules. If anyone finds out, I might get in trouble," Fever protested, keeping his head down. Dustin brushed it off with a casual remark, "Who's gonna know unless someone spills the beans? Still, I'm just a lowly housekeeper. How could I possibly have a meal with you?" Fever remained timid. Dustin's tone grew displeased as he retorted, "What? It's just a meal, and you're not showing appreciation." Fever stammered, "No. It's not that." With a hint of sternness in his expression and an assertive tone, Dustin insisted, "Don't overthink it. Sit down." Fever hesitated, fearing the repercussions, but he dared not disobey. With great reluctance, he sat down. "That's the spirit," Dustin said, his tone warm and encouraging. Dustin smiled and encouraged, "Go on, don't be shy." Fever hesitated, holding onto his plate and avoiding eye contact. "You're still growing, and you're way too skinny, bud. You've got to eat more," Dustin said, adding food to Fever's plate. Fever mumbled a reluctant thanks. His smile was strained, revealing his nervousness. "Not hungry? Maybe it's not to your liking? No worries, try the shrimp or the beef stew." Dustin added more food to his plate, playing the role of a doting father. "Okay, Dr. Reese, you shouldn't worry about me. You should eat, too." Fever trembled with the plate in his hand as he tried to avoid eating. "I'm not hungry, you go ahead," Dustin smiled. "I am not hungry either," Fever stammered, trembling occasionally. "That's fine, think of it as a tasting session. Go ahead, dig in." Dustin nodded. As Fever refused to eat, Dustin suddenly joked, "Why? Do you think I've poisoned the food?" "What dash?" Fever paled, and he managed a forced smile, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "No way, Dr. Reese. You can't be serious." "So, why aren't you eating?" Dustin asked with a smile, watching closely. "Okay, I'll eat." Fever finally picked up a piece of vegetable and took a bite. He stole a glance at Dustin, trying to maintain a cordial facade. "Dr. Reese, come on, give it a try. These flavors are out of this world." Dustin put down his utensils but remained silent, calmly observing Fever. "Dr. Reese, what's wrong? Why aren't you eating? The kitchen specially prepared this sumptuous feast for you." Nervousness began to creep into Fever's smile as he urged Dustin to eat. As Dustin remained silent, Fever's desperation grew. He got agitated, and his face even showed his frustration.